Hello, wonderful patrons. I have a project that I've been working on for quite some time to bring to you today as a prototype, and I'm hoping to get your feedback on it if you can. So, for years, I've been using index cards for initiative, and I find them the best solution so far that I've tried. And so, I have some prototype 5th edition D&D cards here that are poker sized, and my intention is that I'll get them printed on drive-through cards as a deck of cards, and then it saves me time writing all the details on the cards every time. So let me take a step back. And so for a long time, I tried many different initiative systems. I want a simple initiative system that doesn't get in the way of combat, that keeps combat fast, and that just helps me keep things organized and running smoothly. And so I've tried a whole bunch of things like using a crib board, using the DM screen tent cards, using like pogs or representations of the characters in front of me, having the players roll their own die and just keep it in front of them. What else have I done? I've tried magnetic boards, whiteboards, and all kinds of things. And then I've tried apps, and so there's a few different initiative apps out there. And you just type in the character names, and then you just add the monsters, and you work with that. I don't like the app so much because I have to reset them and kind of build them the initiative every time a combat erupts because there's different monsters with different initiative scores, and I just haven't found an app that is fast and convenient as these cards are. And so I used index cards for them. I write the character name, player name, and some basic stats, and then players would just tell me what their initiative order is, what they rolled, and then I would just sort the cards in initiative order, and I'd be good to go. And then as the initiative order adjusts during combat, if players are readying their actions and people come in and out of combat and whatnot, then it's easy for me to adjust the cards. I don't have to be fiddling around with a computer or a phone or anything during combat. So the index cards are my winning approach. Your mileage may vary. You might have other preferences, but I encourage you to give initiative cards a try, even if it's their index cards that you create yourself. Well, anyways, with these index cards, there's a number of bits of information that I like to put on the cards as combat reference and as planning reference as well. So once I started using them, I found more and more ways that they were valuable to me. And so every time I create an initiative card, a new player character comes in, or a new campaign starts, I'm writing down the same fields in the cards all the time. And then I would write them in different order, and they're just a little bit messy. So I decided, okay, well, what if I tried drive-through cards? I've never printed a deck of cards before. I hired Craig Judd, and he's created a professional layout of these cards, and that's what I want to walk with you through today. I have a PDF that you can download, and the cards that I've been using now for several sessions in my campaigns, even for my virtual game. I know that Roll20 has a slick initiative system. I do use that, but I also like having the cards because they are so useful for other references. I can have the characters open in Roll20. I can have the characters open in D&D Beyond, which I use for my 3 D&D campaigns. But these cards are still the fastest and slickest reference I have for the most essential information I need. So I keep them in my hand while I'm even running an online game. But that's just me. I'm a bit old school that way. So anyway, so these cards, I wanted to go through what the information was on the cards, do just a quick walkthrough so you kind of had an idea of how to fill them out, what I had in mind for them, and then you can decide for yourself. And hopefully give me some feedback on what you would do differently, or if they're good as is. And then I'll send them to the printer, get a prototype deck made, and then see how it goes from there. So I've got the initiative cards up on the screen here, and so it's a character label at the top of cards because I anticipate or I plan on building NPC cards and monster cards. For now, I just use the character cards for them in combat, but they have different information that I want to put on those cards than the characters. So I want to create different layouts. So then you could just grab a different colored card. I can't remember what monster will be, red, I think. And then just grab a monster card, insert it into your initiative order, and away you go, and you have a card dedicated just for monster type tracking. Okay, so at the top of the card, I've got the initiative score, and whether you have the players roll it out and tell you what it is, and then you can just sort them out. You can roll initiative yourself if you like. And then something I'm experimenting with is an online initiative roller. I've got a couple in mind. I even used to use Excel and Google Docs for initiative, and I might do that again just because it's easy to put the initiative scores in a spreadsheet, and then just F9 for a random reroll, and then order the cards myself. That's a lot less numbers flying around, etc. So, but in the meantime, you've got a box for your initiative score, their armor class, and their hit points. And so I want to record some of the combat stats that the of the characters, not only to reduce the numbers talk and keep the narrative flowing at the game during combat, but also for planning purposes. So if I'm looking at tweaking or polishing an encounter for encounter difficulty, if I want it to be easy, difficult, or deadly, then I'm going to be looking at the armor class, because the 5th edition armor class is a pretty big factor. Unlike in previous editions, it's a armor class generally is a smaller range, and so a higher armor class makes it very difficult for most monsters to hit, etc. So if I know their armor class and the character's hit point levels, then I can start tweaking my foes and my combats accordingly. So fantastic prep device. And then I've got underneath that their armor and weapons, same reason. Also, every once in a while, like a character falls in water or whatever, I just look up on the card. Okay, here's what armor they've got on. If I'm using heat metal and all kinds of things. So fantastic reference to have there. Magic items. So magic items. This is a little bit more in flux because they get new items, swap out older, less powerful items, etc. And so it's good to have ideas on what they have for magic items that pertain to combat, and not just for damage and attacks and their armor class, but for effects as well. And then frequent moves, which I'll get to in a second. Then I've got a place for notes, so you can just add random notes that you want to track of any kind. I tend to use that. And then at the bottom, I've got the player name. I used to have the player name at the top of my index cards, but I found that because I was creating the cards in the moment, I thought, okay, I need to know this character name and the player, so then I can associate them in the game. But by the end of the first session with any new character or any campaign, I had the players automatically in my mind associated to the characters and memorized. So that field wasn't a lasting value. So I put it at the bottom, and that's why it's at the bottom in these cards. But it's there if you need reference. So going back to the frequent moves. So what I do is I pull up campaign logger during my campaigns, and then I just quickly log. I use auto tag. I can share this in another video if you want another time. But I just quickly log what the character actions are. And then between games, I just review the combats. And I find what the standard operating procedures are, or what the characters and players do most often in combat, as well as the effects of that. So people are creatures of habit. So if something worked well, they're going to do that again and again. And so therefore I can count on 80% of the time my players doing the same things in combat. Now I take it upon myself as a GM, my job, to create combats, encounters, and environments that get them out of that habit, right? That's players learning now, engaging with the game in new ways, and that's the fun factor. But regardless, if the wizard likes his fireball, and at this point in time in the campaign, he is rolling, say, 56 points of damage average, I note that down. Okay, don't forget fireball when you're planning encounters, John, and note that 56 points of damage are going to be done to the wide swath of foes in the encounter. So that just helps me tune and plan encounters a lot better. Same with the rogue. He likes to, he's got this spell, and I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Spike Growth. And so it creates difficult terrain for my monsters. And so that means that they are slower. And then anytime they move in the difficult terrain, so if they're caught in it and they want to move out, every 5 feet they're going to take some damage. It's like stepping on a bunch of D4s, I suspect. And so I forget that the rogue does that. And then if my foes delay or try to do something else, then the rogue just picks them off with the ranged weapon, with this bow, and then the other characters also feast on them that way. So when I'm planning encounters, I like to understand what these standard or typical character moves are. Helps me be a better designer. And so that's the combat card. Now these cards are two-sided, so I also have a role-playing side to the cards. So when you print them out, make sure you put them on a double-sided printer, or be prepared to glue pieces of paper together. Now mind you might not want the role-playing side or the combat side. You just want one or the other. Great. Have at her. And then what I've been doing is I just print these out on a printer, use paper cutter and scissors to trim the cards down, and then I've been using them. So the role-playing side of the card. So I found that when I started using the index cards in campaigns to track combats, I found them very useful reference outside of combat as well. So I started writing all kinds of things down on the cards. So I thought, okay, why don't I just formalize that and create one side that is just for non-combat, which I call role playing, but it's like role playing, trap, puzzle, skill use, that kind of a thing. So on this side of the card, you have the character's name, I guess in case you forget it. So level, race and class, typical fare. And then I have all the D&D 5e skills, the name of the skill, and then the attribute or ability score that's related to that skill for your reference. And then I use those in two ways. So the first thing that I do, so I don't grab the character sheets and record every skill down on the cards. I'm kind of lazy. It takes me a little bit of a time. It's kind of boring. And then when they level up, I got to do a whole new inventory. So I quickly abandoned that idea. I tried it the first time that I printed these cards out. Oh, I've got all these skill slots. I might as well fill them all up with numbers. All right, you've just reached level 3. Shoot, I got to update them all. So the two uses that I use them for are secret DM roll skills. So if I'm rolling stealth, if I'm rolling deception, then I typically roll that roll for the characters, and then I have their skill modifier all pre-calculated, put on the card, so I can just like narrate that. The players know that I'm using their skills, that their character sheet investments are being rewarded. It's just that I don't bother with the constant trade back and forth of numbers. What's your deception skill? For the 10th time in a row, I forgot. Here I've just got it at reference and I roll it, and then I'm just telling the story. The narrative flows smoothly. The second use is for common skills that characters use. So the rogue likes his athletics, likes to somersault around and do funny things, do special moves, chandelier move, the classic stuff. And so that's a frequently used skill. Instead of, again, asking the rogue, okay, what's your current athletic skill? I'm just going to reference the initiative card. So that comes in super handy for me. And that's really why I like these things. Because they're physical. I can just find a character, I pull up the card, I get the reference, and I move on. So and then finally at the bottom of the card on the role-playing side, I've got languages. So I like to have a lot of NPCs, and even in combat, talk with the players. I like intelligent foes, and I like NPCs that can communicate with the characters. And whether it's in combat and I'm trash talking, or I'm giving away tactics, or I'm providing clues, or outside of combat for all the standard parley stuff, the question of language tends to come up. Okay, who can speak Orcish? John, you've asked this 5 times. These 2 characters can speak Orcish. So now we don't get into that at all. And again, I can just keep the narrative flowing smoothly because I just look at the bottom of the cards and I see, okay, these characters have Orcish. I don't want to ask how they learned that language, but there it is. Now we can talk. Or I know that we have to do some linguistic gymnastics with the ones that cannot parley with each other through a common language. So that's the role-playing side of the card. So again, I use these in combat. Outside of combat, these are quite valuable for preparing for adventures and planning encounters and designing things, also for reference during the game. But I also use them for outside of combat initiative. So if a whole bunch of players want to do things at the same time, like they all want to talk to the wizard, the sage, or the guard, then I can just grab the cards and decide, okay, here's who's talking first. I might get them to all roll initiative like it was a combat, and then I put the cards in order. I might just sort them by initiative stat, which is something I do frequently. That's, again, silent and it's quick for me to do. Or something cool that I started doing is I shuffle the cards. Outside of combat, I don't need to necessarily reward character sheet investments. So therefore, if I just randomly pick characters or players, then it's fine. It's totally fine. So I just shuffle the cards, and okay, the character's at the top. Next character is in order is now up, and so on. So it's really fine for adjudicating non-combat actions as well. And then I kind of like them as physical toys. So I have something in my hands quite often to kind of keep my hands busy while I think. If I'm not typing on the computer, then I have like a Rubik's Cube and this weird puzzle snake and other crap. So the cards, when I'm in the game, I find is like a soothing thing. I don't know what it is. If you're a psychologist, tell me what it is that I'm exhibiting here. But I have them. It just gives me a sense of confidence. I'm in control. I can look at the cards even though I might not be reading them, and I don't know. They're just a fantastic little toy. So if you play D&D 5e, I would love it if you opened the PDF file and gave them a glance and gave me your feedback. And even better, if you have a chance, print them out even if you're running an online game, and try filling out the essentials and then run them and then give me feedback based on playtesting. Then I plan on making a few changes, as I mentioned, if anything comes up, and then printing a prototype deck, and then hopefully they'll be available to you on Drive-Thru Cards. So that would be fantastic. So yes, thank you for watching the video. Thank you for your time. Thanks in advance for your feedback, and thank you for being patrons. Your support means a lot to me. And so yeah, thank you very much. Have a good day.